Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Advice and it's by user MinuteMemory6253. My sister is threatening to tell my family and boyfriend that I slept with her fiance. So I, 24 female, have a sister, 29 female, who has been in a relationship for 3 years. She got engaged in February 2025. They rented a small flat in our city. However, she has been staying at our parents' recently due to the fight that started this. I am still a student who's living at home while finishing my master's degree. I have a boyfriend of 2 years and we're currently long distance as he is studying abroad. Little bit of backstory. Me and my sister don't get along. I have ADHD, my sister has ADHD, hyperactive type. She has always been the comedian of the family, but often her jokes come at the expense of others and involves winding people up or acting as a wooden spoon to stir any pot of drama she can find. I tend to not initiate contact with her to avoid any potential issues, since, while she is family, I feel more stressed after spending time together. Me and my sister's fiance get along pretty well, however. We have shared interest in motorsports, and we usually talk about it at family get-togethers. We don't talk outside of gatherings much, just the usual text when Formula 1 or MotoGP is running, or little life updates if we haven't seen each other in a while. My parents have said previously that they find it odd how I am fine with talking to her fiance, but have weird aversion to talking to her directly. But this has never been a point of tension. A little over a month ago, my sister found bank statements in their flat for cards she didn't know existed. Most of the transactions had been to hotels or restaurants abroad. She checked the dates of the restaurants and they line up with the times and countries he had been away for work trips. But the exact restaurant and hotel locations do not add up. E.g., him going away for a conference, but the hotel and restaurants are booked where at least an hour away from the city. She immediately thought he was cheating and searched his phone, but found nothing. He caught her snooping and they fought about it, which ended up with him admitting he had cheated while abroad. The wedding is off and she has moved back into our parents' place while they figure out their lease. The weekend after she came back to our parents, we went out for dinner as they thought she could use a pick-me-up evening with the whole family. Over dinner, we talked a lot about recent life events, other than my sister's fight, and travel got brought up. I have traveled to Singapore in September 2025 to visit friends and relive our undergraduate clubbing days. My parents wanted to plan a trip to Singapore, and I recommended the hotel I stayed in plus a few nice food spots around the area. In hindsight, my sister was uncharacteristically silent after this, but the rest of the dinner went by pretty normally. 2 days ago, my sister invited me to go to dinner that evening, saying she had something serious she wanted to talk about without worrying our parents. This was out of the ordinary for her. We haven't gone out to dinner with just us two since I was probably 15, but this whole situation was hardly ordinary either, so I didn't question it. The dinner hardly had any talking. Right after we ordered our drinks, she accused me of sleeping with her fiance and being one of the women he was cheating on her with. She pulled up the bank statements for me to check, and sure enough, there are transactions for the same hotel in the same week I was in Singapore, the one I mentioned to our parents. She accused me of being jealous of her relationship, saying that I was bitter that she was proposed to within 2 years of them starting dating, and that I clearly thought I was a better match for her fiance since we had more hobbies and interests in common. We literally only have one. There was a lot of back and forth of me trying to reason with her and get any sort of exact details or legitimate proof that could have caused her to think this, but by this point she was livid. The whole thing escalated from 0 to 100 within like 15 minutes. I'm definitely missing a few details of her accusations. There were a lot of them, but the main threat she had was to tell my parents and my boyfriend I was a bitter lying homewrecker, her exact words, if I didn't come clean. How on earth is someone meant to navigate this situation? I think it goes without saying that I never cheated and definitely not with her fiance. But how does someone begin to plead their innocence in a situation like this? I have no witnesses for me when I was in Singapore. I was visiting friends, yes, but I stayed in my hotel every night since they all live in different areas and the hotel was pretty central. Both sides of this case have basically no firm evidence other than a few bills. On top of this, how would I even begin to manage the fallout if she were to tell people this? Long distance is hard enough as is. I cannot imagine how shattered my boyfriend would be if he was told I cheated with a man he considered a friend. Any advice would be massively appreciated. Well, Opie, in my opinion, the only thing you could do is try to get in front of it because there will be no reasoning with your sister. She's hurt, she was cheated on, and she's trying to find an excuse as to why that happened other than the boyfriend sucks. And it is incredibly unfair to you because you're being asked to prove a negative. You're being asked to prove that you didn't sleep with him. So if I were in your shoes, first, I would talk to your boyfriend and tell him exactly what is happening. It will be an unfortunate test to your relationship long distance, but hopefully it'll be okay. And then I would talk to your parents. She's clearly spiraling and she's using you as a scapegoat. Other than that, I would steer clear of your sister unless she's ready to sit down and talk this through like an adult. The one thing I would not do is talk to her ex-fiance to help clear your name, because that's not going to help at all. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section. And now let's check out the community comments. Empirical Hedgehog says, I'd get in front of this immediately. Tell your parents and boyfriend now, before she has the chance to direct the narrative. Your honesty should sway them. Maintain your innocence, and if that's not enough for them, there's nothing you can do. I wish you all the luck. Your sister sounds like a nightmare. And Opie responds, I've been trying to figure out how to even start the conversation for the past day or so. I have a tendency to be pretty blunt when it comes to explaining things though, and I worry that's not the right tone or approach to bring to this kind of emotional conversation. I do, however, have a list of bullet notes I was writing up while drafting this post that I hope I can turn into mental flashcards to try and explain my point of view. I might even show them this post, not entirely sure yet. Hey, Just Saying says, it's a massive coincidence that you would stay at the exact hotel her boyfriend stayed at on the same dates that he was there. This is a hard one to disprove if you weren't doing things with your friends in the evenings. And Dopey responds, regarding the coincidence, agreed. I was really shocked when she showed me the bank statement. The dates had a 3-day overlap where we were both in the same hotel, though I never saw him or knew he was there. I was talking about how I had planned this trip for at least a month beforehand though, so I'm hoping my parents aren't too old that they remember me asking about flights and travel restrictions. I don't go abroad often, but my mom has traveled a lot for work, so she's my go-to for travel advice. Regarding proof from the evenings, I do have photos from nights out with my friends that prove I was with them basically every evening, but those photos dwindle in numbers the later each night got. I will have to ask my friends if any of them can vouch that they dropped me off at my hotel, as that would disprove any restaurant charges. However, the issue of being in the same hotel rears its head again here, since she could always argue I went back to his room instead of mine. And Entertainment Dry 8208 says, I mean, how either stupid or cruel would you have to be to casually mention the hotel you stayed at in Singapore during your secret rendezvous with your sister's fiance in front of her at dinner with your parents to try and cheer her up for being cheated on? Unless you have a history of lying or cruelty, I think your obvious lack of worry about mentioning that hotel proves it is a crazy coincidence. She has every right to feel betrayed and paranoid, and I'm not surprised that her mind can't talk her down from this, especially since he also denied this at first. But for everyone else, it should be clear. Definitely tell your boyfriend. If he is friends with the ex-fiancé, have your boyfriend reach out directly and explain the accusation. Sometimes a man-to-man talk really does make a difference. And Opie responds, I don't blame her for blaming me at all. It's a bloody small probability that this happened without either of us knowing, so anyone would hedge their bets on thinking it was pre-planned. The main issue here is trying to talk her down from this conspiracy she's putting together. I already plan on talking to my parents and boyfriend either tonight or tomorrow morning, but she will be hysterical for weeks if not months about this. She has never let go of things easy, so the chance of her accepting that it was, in fact, unfortunate timing for both of us to be abroad and in the same place is slim to none. I have a feeling the family will end up in a large divide over this. Well, the community agrees. OP needs to try to get ahead of this. So let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. First, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone who interacted with and or commented on my original post. It helped push it out as much as possible, and I got a huge range of points of views and suggestions as to how to approach this. A few people had advice along the lines of, you don't have to prove that you didn't cheat. It's up to your sister to prove that you did. I wish the world worked like this. While yes, that is the most logical way for an issue like this to solve itself, gossip and rumors do not work like that. Many people echoed this, saying that generally people will be biased to the first story they hear. Of course, there are plenty of people in the world who will hear her claim and think it's a bunch of BS, but that would be a smaller portion of people. I'm not willing to leave my reputation or standing with my friends and family in the house of statistics. In order to keep this update linear, let's start with last night, approximately 5 hours after the original post. I video called my boyfriend, going to call him Ken in this post, last night after reading through you guys' comments and advice. Many of you suggested I get in front of this as to not let her direct the narrative, so that's what I tried to do. Tried is the keyword here. We chatted for a bit about normal stuff before I said we should talk about my sister's situation. Ken's facial expression visibly changed when I mentioned this. I asked what was up, and he said she had messaged him some pretty weird stuff earlier that day about her ex and me. For context, Ken knows that me and my sister have a pretty complex relationship. He also knows that me and the ex talked occasionally. He encouraged all four of us to hang sometimes, but this only happened a few times and stopped once he left for his year abroad. I asked Ken what he had been told, and he said this, paraphrased from memory. I got a text from her while I was out saying that she needed to talk to me about our relationship. She said our relationship was doomed because she caught you cheating with her ex-fiance and that you didn't even try to defend yourself. You kept focusing on irrelevant details when it was clear you two were in a hotel together in Singapore. I know you and your sister don't get along, but I never got the impression you two hated each other enough for her to lie about cheating, so I don't know where to go from here. I was floored. As I mentioned in a comment on a previous post, Ken is similar to me in that he puts logical reasoning before extremes. He asked if I had anything to say about it. I gave him the rundown from my point of view in chronological order, starting from when I was booking the holiday back in August 2025. I backed all this up with receipts, screen shares of my bank statements from any relevant times, and photos with timestamps from nights out with friends. Somebody suggested in the last post that I have as many receipts as possible, since it helps build a routine and picture of your day for people, since almost everything costs money these days, so you can track your movement. I did this before I called and made sure I had everything I might need to hand. I also got a few of my friends on text saying they know I was waking up in my own hotel room, since they had to call through the hotel reception to wake me up a few times. The whole thing took around 45 minutes, of which he stayed relatively silent aside from an occasional question to make sure he was understanding all of the links I was drawing up. By the end of it, I was on the brink of tears, mostly because it took saying it all out loud to realize how effed up the whole guilty until proven innocent thing is. Ken bluntly asked if I had cheated, to which I said no, never. He took a minute, then said he trusted me, which was a huge waste off of my shoulders. He asked what could have made my sister think I cheated, and I said I didn't know but thought she was just hurt and looking for someone to pin the blame on so she could vent her anger somewhere. He said that made sense, but he didn't understand how she drew these conclusions or how she pieced this together from a single hotel name drop. I asked what he meant, and he said there's at least 3 Shangri-La hotels or apartment blocks in Singapore, and he didn't understand how she knew I stayed in the exact same hotel. I didn't really have an answer to that. I didn't have a copy of the bank statement and didn't note down the exact recipient from the statement she waved in my face. I also said she could still argue I visited his room or he visited mine, which ended that speculation. I offered to ask to see the bank statement again, but he shut me down and said he would ask since she doesn't know we've spoken. He messaged her last night and she apparently responded saying she would send them to him in the morning, which should have been before this update was written, but I haven't heard anything from him, so I suspect that hasn't happened. The rest of the call was a lot of questions and not a lot of definitive answers. He appreciates that I spoke to him about it and stayed calm instead of spiraling, as it helped him stay calm about it too. I sent him the post I made to ask if he was okay with me updating with our conversation, which he said was fine and he would like to see what people have to say. I slept pretty well after that. On to this morning, right before I started typing this post. Both of my parents were home today, so I offered to cook breakfast as to hope we could all sit down and open up a chance for me to address my sister's case. I suspected that, since she told Ken, she almost certainly told our parents too. However, when I tried to start explaining myself, I got cut off almost as soon as I mentioned the Singapore trip. My parents told me they had already heard my sister's half of the story the day before. No surprise there. My mom, who for context has a higher IQ than my dad and so generally takes charge with these sorts of conversations, said that while they believe they raised me better than to do something like this, she was not going to let me plead my case to them as I was clearly in a better state of mind about it, whereas my sister was torn apart. She said my sister was sensitive and she would think that her own parents didn't believe her or care about her hurting. My dad chimed in, saying that she already has a slight resentment towards them and me because I was praised more when we were young. Context about this comes later, and that he wouldn't get involved but also refused to openly support me in a time where she needed to see she was supported and loved. To say I was blindsided was an understatement. The entire time they were talking on and on about how they didn't want to take sides. They were openly allying with her notion that I cheated with her fiance. The hypocrisy was brutal. I said all of this directly to them, calling out the contradiction and saying that if they didn't take my side but openly comforted my sister, everybody we know would draw up the same conclusion that I cheated and that my parents were being charitable by not reprimanding me further. My mom said that if I was able to prepare all of this evidence and create a defense, this was proof that my mental clarity was leagues above my sister's and that she needed them more. I left after that, went on a ride on my motorbike, stayed out of the house for a couple of hours and took a breather. Context. My parents both come from poor backgrounds. My mom came to the UK with a refugee status, and my dad's father died when he was very young. Both of them are now incredibly well off thanks to their education. As a product of this, academia is very important in our household. I was diagnosed with ADHD in the summer year 10 of secondary school. For those who don't know, Year 11 has students' first major set of national exams called GCSEs, which start in Year 10 and are a 2-year course. My parents rushed to get me on medication, as before this I was failing or getting poor grades despite every parent-teacher meeting being filled with teachers saying I was a top-quality student with zero motivation. My sister, comparatively, never struggled with her studies. My parents praised me a lot more than they praised her, even though I did significantly less work, since an effort of 1% is infinite times greater than 0%. This apparently caused some jealousy, as she didn't get the same treatment from them despite putting in loads more effort, since that was considered her normal. So that's that. People were right in saying that it was going to get messy and that there was a large chance I would walk away from this with fewer people behind me than before. Ken is conflicted about my parents' approach, as he understands comforting the child who was cheated on, but doesn't imagine parents setting aside one daughter for the other. He is an only child, so never had the issue of parents prioritizing any one kid. My sister will be cut off for good once this is all over, but for now, I need to focus on clearing my name as I don't know who else she may have told. I will not be cutting off my parents, so do not suggest that. However, I will be distancing myself and looking into moving out in June after my degree is over. Any advice on managing the parents or the fallout will be much appreciated. However, I do not think my parents' viewpoint will change until my sister comes to terms with all of this. Thank you all for reading. Smiley face. Wow, OP, your parents absolutely suck. If you don't want to cut them off, fine. But honestly, I wouldn't be sharing anything personal with them ever again. For as you say, them being, or at least your mom, a high-Q individual, she sounds like an idiot. And to your sister, I don't care how good or bad she feels that she got cheated on. She's trying to pin it on me. I would poke as many holes to her theory as possible. And publicly if she starts doing the same. Honestly, I would not relent on this just because she's feeling bad. So here's wishing you the best, OP. Thanks so much for sharing and take care. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Petty Revenge and it's by user IndependentLeg2825. I skip episodes of TV series that my soon-to-be ex-wife is watching on Netflix. I'm currently going through a really vicious custody dispute with my soon-to-be ex-wife. I have a great case against her, and my lawyer and I expect to win easily, but until we get a decision from the court, I won't get to see my kids, and I haven't seen them for some time already. So, whenever I have had enough of the abuse that I receive from her on my social media accounts, I move the red line that indicates how much of an episode she has watched to the end of the episode, and then to the exact same position it was in on the next episode. It's my account. I haven't changed the login so that the kids can still use it. So far, she hasn't worked it out. I can tell because she will watch the rest of the episode and sometimes watch another before going back to the episode she originally was up to and starting again. I know it's extremely petty, but it is surprisingly cathartic. OP, this was beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing. And here's wishing you the best with the court decision. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.